She said it like handing back a cup of tea, polite, steady, final. "You're too old, Mom," and the door clicked behind me as if the house itself nodded in agreement. I stood on the landing with the grocery bag cutting into my fingers, oranges bumping against my wrist bone, and listened to my daughter's footsteps fade through our hallway, the same hallway where I once taught her to tie her shoes, where her sock prints used to flower on the tiles after bath time. My name is Helen. I am 77, and I know the sound of each hinge in this place by heart. The kitchen window sings when a wind from the east comes in. The bedroom door sighs when it closes because my late husband sanded it too thin. The front door, the door that just shut on me, has a sharp, uncompromising catch that takes a firm hand. I always had a firm hand. I built my strength kneading bread and carrying laundry baskets and lifting sleeping children from living room carpets to their beds. The bag slipped a little. An orange tumbled free, rolled across the mat, and made the small hollow sound of fruit meeting wood, like a polite apology. I bent to pick it up and caught a whiff of my own cardigan, old soap, rosemary from the garden, a thread of my husband's cologne still hiding in the cuff after all these years. Too old. I held the word in my mouth the way you hold a coin, tasting the metal. The house smelled like boiled potatoes and floor polish, and the faint perfume Lena wears when she thinks something big is about to happen. She'd hugged me moments earlier, a careful, distant hug that felt like being wrapped in newspaper. "Rest, okay? Don't worry about dinner," she'd said, and her smile looked like a ribbon tied too tight around a box. I set the bag on the counter and heard the car start outside, a cheerful chirp, as if the car itself was grateful to be included. The silence that followed had the texture of a closed book. I moved slowly, a habit that has little to do with age and more to do with making nothing fall apart. I rinsed the oranges, set them in the blue bowl with the chip on one side, and listened for the old radiator's knock that comes at 3, the way it has since I was 30. It didn't come. Perhaps the day had slipped its schedule out of pity for me. On the table sat a stack of hospital papers from last week, circles of pink highlighter where the nurse, bright as a spring bud, had pointed to support at home. I could still hear the brisk kindness in her voice, a kindness strangers keep for stray animals. Lena had been nodding and nodding, glancing at the clock, keeping her purse clutched under her arm, like someone guarding a ticket. "We'll figure it out," she'd said then. "Of course we will," I'd replied, because that is what mothers say. But tonight the promise was folded away with the spare linen. There'd been a man with Lena earlier, a friend from work, she said, though his shoes were too gleaming for friendship and his pen clicked like a metronome. He'd stood in the hall, speaking in a voice designed not to be remembered. Soft, clipped, careful. I cannot remember his name for the life of me. I remember, however, the map of scratches on the entry table where my grandson, Michael, once parked his toy cars in a perfect row, the red one always first. He left them years ago, then outgrew them, then outgrew visiting. I boiled water for tea, knowing I would forget to drink it, and pulled a chair to the window. The sky had the bruised look of early evening. On the opposite balcony, Mrs. Patel was shaking out a rug. She looked over, lifted her hand. I lifted mine back. In other times, I would have asked her to come for tea and a slice of cake. Today, the cake tin was empty, and I could not think of flour without thinking of losing my place in the recipe, of salt turning into sugar in my head if I didn't watch closely. Too old. The words kept pacing. What exactly is too old for a mother, I wondered? Too old for your voice to calm a fever? Too old to hold the door while your child rushes through it to a newer life? The kettle clicked off. I poured. The steam fogged my glasses, and I frowned at the smudge that has lived on the left lens since the morning my husband died, when I pressed my face and the glasses into his sweater, and every mark that came after turned into a souvenir. I tried to tidy. Tidying is prayer for the hands. I folded a blanket, straightened a cushion, moved a stray sock that had somehow survived the laundry's call to arms. The radio on the counter showed the same station it always did, the one with easy music and weather shaped like reassurance. I set it low. A man sang about a woman who waited under a street lamp, and I thought about the lamp that used to stand outside our old apartment, the one that made winter feel like someone's small, steady breath on the back of your neck. I am not sentimental, not really. Sentiment is when you embroider the truth to keep it warm. My truth today was colder. Lena had left, and the way she said "too old" had in it the clean click of a decision already made. As I wiped the counter, my eye fell on a folded note by the fruit bowl. "Mom, don't forget your pills." I traced the letters. The handwriting had shrunk over the years into something efficient, like instructions on the back of a box. I took the pills, swallowed the chalky water, and allowed myself the smallest, most foolish hope that she would come back in an hour and say she'd been cruel and that the words were only the symptom of a day gone wrong. When the doorbell rang, I started, hard enough that the spoon leapt in the cup. The bell has a silly tinny ring. My husband always said he'd fix it. I wiped my hands and opened the door. Not Lena. 2 men stood there, one in a navy jacket with a clipboard, the other younger, eyes darting like he was learning his eyebrows. The older one smiled in a way that apologized for his teeth. "Mrs. Whitaker?" he asked. "Yes," I said, and my voice had all its years in it. "We're here to measure for the safety rails," he said, checking the paper. "Stair rails, grab bars in the bathroom," the younger one added in a tone that wanted to be kind and landed on exercise. I blinked. "I didn't order those," I said, and every word felt like pushing a wardrobe across the floor. "Your daughter did," the older one said quickly, relief blooming because the paperwork was a map he could point to. "Lena, signed this afternoon, said it was urgent." He held up the clipboard like a shield. I looked at the signatures. Lena's name looped neatly, the pen's tail flicking just so, and beneath it, a second signature in small, strict letters. A name I recognized from the hospital pamphlet, someone from Transitions and Care. The house felt suddenly 2 degrees cooler. "Come in," I said, because I'm polite even to storms. They stamped their shoes and moved carefully through the hall, as if afraid to scuff a museum. They measured. They spoke in inches and centimeters. They tapped the banister and worried about the bathroom tile. I watched their hands. The older man had a gold ring with a nick on one side, skin pale under it where the sun had never tried. He told me about his mother without realizing he was telling me, the way people do when their sentences pull their pockets inside out. "We put rails for her too," he said, "after she fell." There was pride in his voice, and I nodded as if all rails were acts of love. When they left, the younger one hesitated at the door. "You're very independent," he said, and I thought, what a strange thing to be told in your own doorway. The hallway frowned around me after they'd gone, as if the walls were trying to understand whose side they were on. I called Lena. 3 rings, then her voicemail, her cheerful work voice asking the world to leave a message, and it would hear back when it was convenient. I didn't leave one. I called Michael. His number went straight to silence, as if my call had to travel through snow. I set the phone down and noticed another paper slip under the magnet on the fridge, a printed email confirmation. The top line hit me like the edge of a cupboard door. Appointment confirmed. Monday, 10 a.m., Maple Grove residence, intake and tour. My breath turned small and thin. The email was addressed to Lena and CC'd to a man whose name I could not pronounce, full of consonants like a fence. Maple Grove. I pictured green brochures, wide windows, polite hands. I thought of my husband's last afternoon when he'd gripped my wrist with a strength that made me laugh through crying and whispered, "Stay where you belong, Nell." He'd called me Nell when he wanted to remind me I was more than the sum of my chores. I pressed my palm to the fridge and felt the humming like a cat. The world was still running. So was the plan. Then came the sound. A brisk, businesslike tapping, not at the door, but at the side window by the fire escape, the one only neighbors or birds ever found. I turned, heart-rabbiting. There, framed by twilight and the spider lace of the old geraniums I'd forgotten to water, was Mrs. Patel with her knuckles on the glass and her mouth set in a line I didn't know she owned. She held up an envelope, fat and official, and pointed at the name on it, then at me, then shook her head once, hard. I lifted the latch and pushed the window open. "This came to my box," she said, breathless, thrusting it into my hands. "They got the number wrong. I'm so sorry. I opened it by mistake." The envelope was addressed to Lena, but beneath her name, in smaller type that made my eyes prickle, was mine. Inside was a letter from a bank I have never used, beginning with the sentence that drained the warmth from the kitchen and sent it under the door. "We are writing to confirm the transfer of ownership for the property at 14 Beach Lane." My eyes skipped, stumbled, found the date, today, and the place where a witness had signed, a neat, forgettable signature. And above it, in Lena's hand, that familiar looped tail. The orange I had put back in the bowl rolled again, and this time I let it go. Mrs. Patel steadied the letter while I read, her hand hovering as if she could catch the words before they hit me. The paper had that smug, heavy feel of things decided. I placed it flat on the table, smoothed it with my palm, the way I used to flatten construction paper for Lena's school projects, and said very carefully, "Would you mind staying while I call?" She nodded without questions, pulled a chair, and sat forward like a midwife. I dialed the bank number printed beneath the word congratulations, which sat there like confetti on a grave. An automated voice wanted to know if I was excited to learn about new services. I told it no, and pressed 0 the way one swats a fly. After a labyrinth of polite sentences, a woman came on the line, all professional smiles I could hear but not see. I told her my name and the address, read the numbers twice, and explained that I had not transferred anything to anyone, not today, not ever. Her tone lost a shade of brightness. There was typing, the quiet kind, as if the keys were padded. "We have a recorded authorization," she said, "and a durable power of attorney on file from last month." For a moment, language itself felt slippery, like a floor waxed when your back is turned. "Whose signature?" I asked. "Do you have for that?" She cleared her throat. "Yours, Mrs. Whitaker. Electronic." I laughed then, not from humor, but from the small rebellion of air forced the wrong way. "I don't do electronic," I said. "I do drawers and envelopes and an old ballpoint with a bite mark." She hesitated. "There's also a cosigner," she added, and said Lena's full name, each letter falling into place like silverware in a drawer. Heat rose behind my eyes, and I folded the edge of the tablecloth between my fingers to keep them still. "Can you email me what you have?" I asked. "We can only send documents to the email on record," she said, apologetic. "To my daughter, then," I said, and heard my voice from somewhere else, a theater balcony where an older actress tries not to forget her lines. "I will lodge a dispute," I added, because sometimes the right word can be a light switch. She gave me a case number that sounded like a serial for a dime novel and wished me a good evening that could not be rescued by any adjective. When I hung up, the kitchen had shifted, not the furniture, but the way the light held it, as if someone had changed a bulb for a colder one. "Tea," Mrs. Patel said, already up, already rinsing 2 cups as if to keep my hands free for the next blow. I reached for the drawer where we kept the old documents, marriage certificate, the deed from the year we moved in, my husband's letters from his apprenticeship with the carpenter, whose name we used to practice like a tongue twister, and found it sticky with crumbs of life, rubber bands, a pencil too short to sharpen, the spare key to a neighbor's long-vanished cat sitter. The deed was there, yes, its edges soft as bread, but there was a newer folder behind it with Maple Grove's logo, peeking like a small patient flag. I lifted it and saw a checklist, medication schedule, room preferences, dietary notes. In Lena's handwriting, neat as a ruled road, under personal items to bring, it said, "Mom's blue bowl, Chip, framed photo on mantle, cardigan she likes. I stared at that line as if it were an act of mercy that canceled the crime. The human mind is a busy accountant. It likes to find balance even in theft. She thinks she's saving you, Mrs. Patel said softly, reading my face. Saves herself the trouble, I answered, and then hated myself for the poison in the thought because it stung both of us. The kettle tapped, the way a kettle taps when it knows it must be taken off now or it will sulk into bitterness. We drank standing up like conspirators. I called Lena again. This time she answered on the second ring, her hello pitched in that bright zone where people keep good news ready to be unwrapped. Mom, I was just going to call you. Did the Rails guys come? I wanted it to be a surprise, but... The surprise arrived, I said, and I let the silence sit between us, a full plate sliding down a long table. What do you mean? She asked carefully, her voice moving a fraction lower. The bank wrote, Maple Grove wrote, you signed. I heard her breath catch like fabric. Okay, she said, a word used by doctors before they deliver something you won't like. Okay, Mom, listen. You fell last month. You won't tell me when you forget the stove. Michael is busy with exams. I can't be there every hour. Maple Grove is. It's safe. And the transfer, please don't be upset. We need to cover the fees, and the market is good now. And we can get you a lovely room with a view of the maple trees. You'll like them in the fall. Lena, I said. My name for her came out like a hymn with a chord missing. I taught you not to take candy that wasn't yours. I didn't realize I should have included houses. She made a sound, small, broken, then hardened it. It's still ours, she said. It's the family's. We're just rearranging so you're cared for. By selling the floor I stand on, I said, by moving me into a view that belongs to other people. You won't be alone, she said, and in the pause I could hear the words she didn't say anymore. Come by, I told her. If this is a kindness, bring it to the door in your own hands. She started to speak, explaining, justifying, offering the language of brochures. But I ended the call because there are moments when even a mother must hang up to keep her voice. Night arrived with that cheap theatricality of the streetlight outside, making the living room a stage set. Mrs. Patel insisted on staying until Lena came. She phoned her son to say she would be late to dinner, told him to keep the doll warm and not to stir it like a man. We tidied without moving anything precious, as if the objects were witnesses. I took down the photo from the mantel, my husband at the beach the year we thought we were poor, and later learned we were rich in all the ways that cost more. He was grinning around an ice cream he pretended not to like. I framed him in the lamplight and asked, "What would you do?" He answered, as the dead always do, in the habits they left you. He would measure, he would check, he would put on his shoes. So I put on mine. I opened the old tin where we kept the papers no one was meant to see. The letter he wrote me before his last surgery, yellowed now, in which he'd scribbled a map to a small savings account he never spoke about because he loved surprises, the useful kind. I hadn't touched it because the saving felt like an altar I shouldn't disturb. My fingers found the bank book, the numbers modest as shy children, enough for a phone consult with a lawyer who would not look at me like a calendar, enough for a taxi if I needed to leave before anyone could decide my bedtime. At 8:30, footsteps came down the hall, brisk, paired, familiar, and not. The doorknob turned before the bell, and the chain caught with a bright, ringing dignity. I had installed that chain myself the week after my husband died because grief teaches you both what can happen and how to stop some of it. "Mom?" Lena's voice, too bright, the glaze on overcooked carrots. Behind her, the soft cough of a man clearing a professional throat. I saw their shapes through the fisheye peephole. Lena in her green coat that makes her look like spring trying to be sensible, and the man with the gleaming shoes from this afternoon, holding a leather folder pressed to his ribs like a small, obedient dog. "Open up," she said, not unkindly. We have forms to go over just to make things smooth. Mrs. Patel stood beside me, her shoulder a quiet wall. We'll talk through the chain, I said, and slid the lock as far as it would go without surrender. Mom, please, Lena said. Don't make this harder. I looked at her eyes, my eyes, borrowed and updated, and felt a steadiness arrive, old and tall. Hard is not a word that frightens me, I said. I have done hard for longer than you've known how to spell it. What I haven't done is give away my name on a dotted line I did not dot, so we will speak here. The man leaned in, showing a tasteful smile. Mrs. Whitaker, I'm Ethan, he said, offering a card through the gap like a magician producing a dove. We just want to make sure you understand your options. I took the card, slid it back. My understanding grows with every attempt to dim it, I said. The hallway light flickered, the building's ancient version of a drum roll, and in the next second, someone farther down the hall tried our doorknob, as if by accident, then tried it again, firmer, as a folded sheet of paper shivered under the crack. I stooped and pulled it in. It was a notice from a company I'd never heard of, suggesting a preliminary walkthrough for the new owners on Friday. The date glowed on the page, the day after the Maple Grove tour. No, I said quietly, for the first time that evening, using the word the way a wall uses bricks. No, I repeated, letting it live in my mouth. Then I lifted the chain 1 inch, just enough to slide out my hand, and placed my house key on Lena's palm. Feel its weight, I told her. If it feels light, you are not ready to hold it. If it feels heavy, carry it like a promise and give me back what you took. The chain hummed as the metal met metal. She flinched, and the man's pen clicked once, loud as a gavel. The chain trembled as I closed the door, leaving Lena and that man in the hallway, their shadows stretching like stains under the weak light. Mrs. Patel touched my elbow, steady but silent, and I felt my pulse in my fingertips. I leaned against the wood of the door and listened to their murmurs outside, Lena's voice tense, clipped, and the man's lower, a river trying to smooth stone. Then footsteps receded. The stairwell swallowed them, and I was left with the sound of my own breath, shallow as a draft. I returned to the table and placed the notice beside the bank letter, 2 pieces of paper that together told me I was already halfway erased. The house smelled faintly of onions from Mrs. Patel's scarf, and of my husband's tobacco that still clung to the furniture after all these years. You must fight, she said, pouring more tea into my cup, though neither of us wanted tea anymore. I stared at the chip on the blue bowl, thinking of how often I had told Lena, "Be careful, things break." She had always laughed, saying, "It's just a bowl." But here I was, with the proof that everything could be broken, even mothers. When Mrs. Patel finally left, I sat in the silence. I could hear the refrigerator humming its slow hymn, the tick of the clock, and the creak of the beams under the floorboards, like old bones. I unfolded my husband's letter again, the one he'd written before his surgery, where he'd scribbled about the secret account. The words wavered, not because of my eyes, but because of what they carried. Foresight. He must have known in some buried corner of himself that one day I would need a rope thrown into a rising tide. The next morning the sun slanted through the curtains with the rude cheerfulness of a guest who has overstayed. My phone rang early. It was Michael, my grandson. "Grandma," he said, voice weary, "Mom told me you're upset." His tone had that thin patience of someone balancing textbooks and obligations. "She just wants what's best. Maple Grove is nice. I've seen the pictures." My throat tightened. "Pictures don't show the smell of bleach and loneliness," I said softly. "Do you remember the garden, Michael? The apple tree you used to climb? That's what I see from this window, not a hallway of strangers." He was silent for a beat, then muttered, "I don't have time for this right now," and hung up. The line went dead, but the echo of his childhood voice remained, the one that once called me Nana higher as I pushed him on the swing. I sat very still until the kettle whistled itself hoarse. By noon, I had gathered the courage to call the lawyer whose number my husband had scribbled on the margin of his note. The receptionist spoke in a voice so calm it made me believe for a moment that order could be restored. I explained haltingly, ownership transfer, signatures I never signed, a residence I never chose. She promised an appointment for Thursday, urged me to bring every document I had. Her words carried both gravity and balm. "It's not too late, Mrs. Whitaker. Not too late." In the afternoon, Lena arrived without warning. She came alone this time, hair pinned too neatly, face pale. She held a bag of groceries, as if carrots and milk could erase signatures. "Mom," she said, setting the bag down, "we need to talk." I looked at her hands, the same hands I once held crossing busy streets, the same hands that clapped at school plays. Now they clutched contracts. She began speaking quickly, as if speed could disguise betrayal. "It's not about getting rid of you. It's about safety, stability. You'll have people around, medical staff. You won't have to worry." "Won't have to worry," I repeated, tasting the phrase like bitter medicine. "But Lena, worry is love. Every night I worried if you were warm, if you'd eaten, if your shoes were dry. That's what mothers do. And now you want to take away my last worry, my home, by calling it care." Her eyes filled, but she did not let the tears fall. "You make it sound cruel," she whispered. "I'm trying to make it easier for everyone." I pointed to the mantel, to the photo of her father grinning with his ice cream. "Easier for whom? He built this place with his hands, board by board. We built it with birthdays, with Sunday stews, with lullabies. Easier is not the same as better, Lena." For a long moment she stood frozen, then turned sharply, muttering, "You'll understand one day." The door closed behind her like a verdict. That night, I wrote in my journal, something I hadn't done in years. My pen moved fiercely, scarring the page with truths. They think age makes me voiceless. They think years weaken memory, but I remember everything. I remember promises. I remember work. I remember love. Sleep came late, restless. I dreamt of the house stripped bare, strangers walking across floors I had scrubbed on my knees, their shoes leaving no respect. When I woke, the sheets were damp with sweat, and the dawn light looked like accusation. I rose early, made strong coffee, and spread the documents across the table. The deed, the letter, the notice, my husband's map. I felt his presence in the quiet, a whisper of sawdust and aftershave. "Stand tall, Nell," I imagined him saying, and I knew I would, because if they wanted to move me like furniture, they would find this old chair had roots, and roots fight back. The morning after felt sharper, as if the air itself had grown edges. I laid out the papers again, the deed yellowed at its corners, the bank letter smug in its newness, the notice of strangers who already claimed to be owners. I pressed each one flat on the table, like cards in a game I had never agreed to play. The blue bowl sat in the middle, with its chipped side turned toward me, as if even the pottery wanted to witness. I called the lawyer's office again, just to make sure the appointment for Thursday still stood. "Bring everything you have," the receptionist repeated, her tone brisk. A woman who must hear voices like mine every day, trembling, urgent, trying to wrap both hands around what is slipping away. "Do not sign anything else," she added. The words settled into me like stones into soil. I wouldn't. Not even a receipt, I thought. After the call, I opened the curtains. The street outside was waking, children running toward school with backpacks bouncing, Mrs. Patel's son scraping frost from his car windshield, a dog lifting its leg on the lamppost. Ordinary life, steady, oblivious to the way my own was unraveling. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass and whispered to myself, I am not furniture to be moved. I am the one who built the room. By noon, Lena returned again, but this time she did not come alone. Michael trailed behind her, tall now, with shadows under his eyes from too many late nights of study or distraction. He carried a backpack that bulged with notebooks and a phone that never left his hand. He barely glanced at me as they entered, Lena using the spare key she had kept for emergencies. The word felt like theft now. "Mom," she said, trying to keep her tone soft. "We need to talk together." She gestured toward the couch, as if I were a guest in my own living room. Michael sank into a chair, restless, tapping his shoe. I sat opposite them, back straight, the documents still spread across the table like witnesses. "Talk," I said, folding my hands in my lap. Lena began carefully, as though rehearsed. "We love you. We're not abandoning you. We're trying to do what's best. The house is too much for you alone." "It was never too much when I was feeding the three of you," I cut in, my voice steady, though my chest thumped. "It was never too much when your father carried beams into this place with his bare hands. It is not the house that is too much. It is your hurry to empty it." Michael looked up then, his face a mixture of guilt and irritation. "Grandma," he said, "Maple Grove isn't bad. My friend's grandmother is there. She has her own room, TV, people around. You'll be safer." "Safer from what, Michael? From my own memories? From the smell of the roses your grandfather planted outside? From the sound of the stairs you used to race down when you were little?" My words cracked, but not from weakness. He shifted, muttered, "It's not that simple." "No," I said, "it is exactly that simple. This is my home, and you've sold it behind my back." Lena's face flushed. She reached for my hand, but I pulled it away. "Mom, listen. We can't afford the care otherwise. The fees are high and—" "You mean you can't afford your life otherwise," I said sharply. "The mortgage, the car, the trips you take. So you chose my roof to pay for them." Her mouth trembled. For a second, I saw the little girl she had once been, standing in a schoolyard with scraped knees. But the girl was gone, replaced by a woman clutching contracts instead of crayons. Michael leaned forward, impatient. "It's done, Grandma. The papers are signed. Fighting it will just make everything harder." I looked at him, really looked. My grandson, who once built forts in my living room with cushions and blankets, who used to beg me for hot chocolate on snowy days. Now his eyes slid away from mine, and I wondered if blood ties could thin until they were no more than thread. I stood, slowly but firmly, and gathered the documents. "You may think it is done," I said, "but the earth doesn't shift just because you draw new lines on a map. This house knows me. These walls hold my name. You cannot erase that with ink." Lena stood too, reaching for the papers, but I pulled them to my chest. "Mom, please, don't make this ugly." "It became ugly the day you signed my name without asking me," I replied. The silence that followed was heavy. Michael rose, muttering something about being late for class. He kissed my cheek, a quick brush, more duty than love, and left. Lena hesitated, her eyes wet, but her jaw stiff. "You'll thank me one day," she whispered, then followed him out. When the door closed, I locked it, bolted it, and slid the chain. The sound was final, like the clang of a gate. My hands trembled, but my resolve did not. That night I called Mrs. Patel and told her everything. She listened without interruption, then said firmly, "You must not face this alone. I will come with you to the lawyer. We will show them you are not as weak as they believe." Her words steadied me. I sat at the kitchen table, the photo of my husband beside me, and wrote in my journal again. They think I am old, but age is not weakness. Age is record. Every line on my face is proof that I have endured. They may take the papers, but they will not take my voice. When I finally went to bed, I placed the deed under my pillow as if it were a talisman. Sleep came slowly, but when it did, I dreamt not of loss, but of standing tall in a courtroom, my voice echoing clear, and Lena looking at me with the same astonishment she had the day I first let go of her bicycle seat, and she realized she could ride alone. And for the first time in many nights, I believed the fight was only just beginning. I woke before dawn, the kind of waking that comes not from rest, but from a mind too loud to sleep. The sky outside was a soft bruise, blue shading into gray, and the house felt as though it was holding its breath with me. I dressed slowly, in the cardigan that still smelled faintly of rosemary and soap, and carried the folder of documents into the kitchen. I spread them across the table, as if laying out evidence for a trial. The deed with my husband's signature, the bank's smug confirmation, the notice for new owners, the Maple Grove pamphlets, each page a weapon or a wound. I brewed strong coffee and sat facing the window, watching the street lamps flicker out one by one. Across the road, Mrs. Patel was already awake, her kitchen light glowing like a steady lantern. I thought of her words from last night. "You must not face this alone." That sentence had taken root inside me. For so long, I had carried burdens silently, believing silence itself was a form of dignity. But maybe dignity was also found in speaking aloud, in refusing to be erased. At 9, the phone rang. It was Lena. "Mom," she began, her voice tired, "I don't want us to fight. Please let me come over so we can talk calmly." I almost laughed at the word calmly. Calm was what they wanted from me, to nod, to shuffle along, to accept. But I agreed. Better to see her face than let the plans proceed in shadows. When she arrived, she came alone this time, her hair loose, her coat unbuttoned. She looked younger somehow, more vulnerable, as if she had rehearsed arguments but left them at the door. She sat opposite me at the table, her eyes flicking nervously to the documents. "Mom," she said, "I know you're angry, but please believe me, we're not trying to hurt you. I can't manage everything anymore. I'm juggling work, Michael's tuition, the mortgage. I'm scared of you falling again. I'm scared of being the only one who has to deal with it all." Her voice cracked on the last word. For a moment, my anger softened. I saw not the woman with contracts, but the girl who once cried when her goldfish died, who once clutched my hand at the dentist. "Lena," I said gently, "being scared does not give you the right to steal. I never asked you to carry me. I asked only to be respected in my own home." Tears welled in her eyes, but she shook her head. "You don't understand how hard it is. You think I have choices, but I don't. This is the only way." I leaned forward, my voice steady. "There are always choices. You chose the easier path. For you, not for me." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the hum of the fridge. Then she whispered, "If Dad were here, he'd agree with me." The words sliced. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping the floor. "Do not use your father's name to justify this," I said, my voice low but fierce. "He built this house with his hands, with love. He would never sign me away like a burden." Her face crumpled, but she said nothing more. She gathered her coat, muttered, "I'll call you later," and left. When the door closed, I felt both drained and strangely stronger. The storm had passed, but something inside me had hardened. I picked up my husband's photo from the mantel and whispered, "I will not let her bury me before my time." That afternoon, Mrs. Patel came over with a tray of food, spiced lentils and rice, the comfort of another culture's kindness. We sat together, eating quietly, until I showed her the documents. She adjusted her glasses, read each line carefully, and finally said, "This is fraud. You must bring these to the lawyer. Do not wait." Her certainty steadied me. I packed the folder neatly, added the bank book my husband had left me, and slipped them into my bag. I felt like a soldier preparing for battle. That evening, the phone rang again. This time it was Michael. His voice was hesitant, almost ashamed. "Grandma, Mom told me you're fighting this. Please, please don't. It'll only make things worse." "Worse for who?" I asked softly. He was silent. Then he muttered, "For everyone," and hung up. I sat in the quiet, my heart aching, for everyone. That phrase carried the cowardice of youth, the fear of conflict. But I had lived too long, seen too much, to confuse comfort with justice. As night fell, I wrote again in my journal. They want me to be silent. They want me to accept. But I am not a guest in this story. I am the author. Tomorrow I will carry my truth to the lawyer, and they will hear me, loud and clear. I slipped the journal under my pillow, the way I had once hidden Lena's birthday gifts there when she was small. The house creaked around me, but instead of fear, I felt resolve. For the first time in many days, I slept deeply, dreaming not of loss, but of standing tall, my voice unshaken as the world finally listened. Because the fight had begun and I was ready, I rose before the sun, long before the street outside filled with footsteps and cars. The silence of the house was my armor. I moved from room to room, touching objects as if to remind them and myself that they were still mine. The embroidered pillow I stitched when Lena was a child, the clock that ticked too loudly yet had counted every Christmas, the cracked teapot that had poured 1,000 cups. I whispered to each one, "Not yet. I'm not leaving you yet." The lawyer's appointment weighed on me like a stone in my pocket. Thursday. Today was Wednesday, and already the walls felt restless, as though the house itself knew what papers claimed. I boiled coffee, black and strong, and sat at the table with my bag packed neatly, documents, the deed, my husband's hidden bank book. I rehearsed what I would say. I did not sign. This was done behind my back. I want my home protected. The sentences lined up in my mind like soldiers waiting for the call. By mid-morning, Mrs. Patel knocked gently and entered with her steady presence. "We should practice," she said without preamble, and sat across from me like a second lawyer. "Tell me your story as if I am the judge." I cleared my throat, felt my age press on my lungs, and began. My voice trembled at first, but she didn't interrupt. She nodded, encouraged, corrected my phrasing when I faltered. "Don't say I think. Say I know. Don't say I hope. Say I demand." By the end, my voice had grown firmer, sharper. She smiled. "Good. You are stronger than you remember." In the afternoon, Lena called again. I let the phone ring until the machine picked up. her voice filling the kitchen. "Mom, please, I don't want us to fight. You don't understand. If we lose this chance, we'll lose everything. Maple Grove is the only way. I'll come tomorrow to take you." Her words hung in the air like smoke. To take me, as if I were luggage, not a mother. I pressed the stop button on the machine, my hand shaking, but my resolve steadier than before. I would not let her take me anywhere. The day slipped by slowly, measured in small sounds. The kettle's sigh, the groan of the stairs, the rustle of the newspaper Mrs. Patel left for me. In the evening, I opened my husband's letter again. His handwriting, uneven but determined, seemed to speak across time. "Stay where you belong, Nell." I traced the letters with my fingertip until they blurred into my skin. Night fell heavy. I locked every bolt, checked each window twice. Still, sleep was thin, fragile. Dreams came jagged. Strangers walking through my living room. Lena carrying boxes out the door. Michael looking at me with a stranger's eyes. I woke often, the darkness pressing against me, but each time I repeated like prayer, "Tomorrow I go to the lawyer. Tomorrow I fight." At dawn, the sound of the mail slot jolted me. An envelope slid across the floor, pale against the rug. I picked it up, heart pounding. It was from Maple Grove. Inside was a glossy brochure and a formal letter. "Welcome, Mrs. Whitaker. We look forward to your intake appointment. Your daughter has confirmed arrangements. Please bring personal items for comfort." My breath caught. They were writing as though I had already agreed, as though I were a piece of furniture scheduled for delivery. I pressed the letter flat on the table, fury rising hot in my chest. For a moment, I felt the years peel away, felt myself young again, defending my brother in the schoolyard, facing down the neighbor who mocked our poverty, standing at my husband's side when others doubted him. That fire was not gone. It had only been buried under the ashes of age. Mrs. Patel arrived soon after, carrying her thermos of chai. I showed her the letter, my hands trembling not from fear, but from rage. She read it, her eyes narrowing. "Then you must bring this too," she said. "It shows they've acted without your consent. A court will see it." We packed everything neatly into a folder, clipped tight, ready for the lawyer. I dressed carefully that day, my best coat, polished shoes, the brooch my husband once gave me. Not for vanity, but for armor. They expected an old woman bent under time. I would arrive as the woman who had survived wars of the heart and house, who had carried life on her back and still stood upright. As evening fell, I sat by the window, the documents heavy but secure in my bag. Lena did not call again. Perhaps she was gathering her own weapons, contracts, signatures, polite men in suits. But tomorrow I would have my voice. I placed the blue bowl at the center of the table, its chip facing me. It had survived falls, clumsy hands, countless meals, still whole, though marked, like me. That night, I wrote in my journal one last time before the day of reckoning. They will see me. They will hear me. I am not too old to fight. I am not too old to keep what is mine. Tomorrow, I walk into that office carrying every year, every scar, every truth, and I will not walk out defeated. Sleep came late, but when it did, I dreamed not of loss, but of standing in a courtroom, my voice clear, the judge leaning forward, listening. Tomorrow, the battle would begin, and I was ready. The morning of the lawyer's appointment arrived with a chill that settled into the bones of the house. I woke before the alarm, sat on the edge of the bed, and felt the weight of the folder in my bag already pressing against the day. The documents were more than papers. They were my life flattened into signatures and numbers. I touched the deed again. The ink of my husband's hand, faded but still alive. It felt as though he was whispering across time. "Stand tall, Nell. This house is ours." I dressed with care. A navy skirt, the cream blouse with the pearl buttons, the brooch he gave me on our 25th anniversary. My reflection in the mirror startled me. Not the frail, tired woman Lena wanted to portray, but a face lined with endurance, eyes bright with something fiercer than age. Dignity, defiance. Mrs. Patel knocked promptly at 9, holding her thermos of chai and her umbrella, though the sky was clear. "For protection," she said with a wink, slipping her arm through mine as we walked to the waiting taxi. The driver looked at us in the rearview mirror, two old women with determined faces, and did not make small talk. The law office was on the 3rd floor of a stone building downtown, the kind with brass railings and staircases that echoed footsteps. Inside, the receptionist greeted us politely and asked us to wait. My heart beat in my ears, every tick of the clock swelling like thunder. Mrs. Patel placed her hand over mine, steady, warm. Finally, we were ushered in. The lawyer was younger than I expected, mid-30s perhaps, but with sharp eyes and a firm handshake. His nameplate read Daniel Reed. He gestured to 2 chairs. "Mrs. Whitaker, please, tell me everything." I opened the folder. My hands trembled at first, but then I remembered Mrs. Patel's advice. "Don't say I think, say I know." So I spoke. I told him about the letter from the bank, the fraudulent signatures, the Maple Grove arrangements made without my consent. I laid the glossy brochure on his desk like an accusation. "They are moving me as though I were a parcel," I said. "But I never signed. I never agreed. This house is mine. It was built by my husband's hands. It holds my life, and I will not let them take it." Mr. Reed listened intently, asking questions, making notes. He examined the documents with a magnifier, comparing signatures. He frowned. "This electronic authorization, they claim it's yours, but it doesn't match your actual hand. And this durable power of attorney, did you ever sign such a thing?" "Never," I said, my voice firm. "Then this is serious fraud," he said, "and coercion. If your daughter acted without your full consent, we can contest every action taken under that authority. We will freeze the transfer immediately." His words were a lifeline. Mrs. Patel squeezed my arm. I felt my lungs expand for the first time in weeks. "But," he added carefully, "you must be prepared. This will not be easy. Your daughter will fight. The institution will fight. They may try to paint you as incapable of making decisions." "Too old," I murmured bitterly. He nodded. "We'll prove otherwise. You're here. You're coherent. You're fighting. That matters." He drafted an emergency motion, promising to file it that afternoon. "For now," he said, "do not let anyone pressure you. If they try to force you out, call me immediately. You have rights." I left the office lighter, though the battle had only begun. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, scattering light across the stone steps. Mrs. Patel lifted her umbrella against the glare and laughed softly. "See? Already the sky approves." Back home, I placed the folder on the mantel beneath my husband's photo. The house seemed to exhale, its walls easing just a little. I made tea, poured it into the chipped blue bowl for luck, and sat in silence, savoring the warmth. But peace did not last. That evening, Lena arrived unannounced. She carried no groceries, No excuses this time, only fury. Her eyes were red, her coat unbuttoned, her hands shaking. "What have you done, Mom?" she demanded. "I told the truth," I replied calmly. "You went to a lawyer? You're destroying everything. Do you know how much money is at stake? Do you know what this means for me, for Michael?" "For you, yes," I said. "For Michael, I'm not sure. He will inherit shame if you continue this way." She flinched, then lashed out. "You're selfish. You'd rather cling to old walls than help your family survive. You don't care about us. You never did." My voice rose like a whip. "Never say I didn't care. Every meal, every night I stayed awake when you were sick, every stitch in your clothes, every dream I put aside, it was all for you. And now you call me selfish because I refuse to be erased?" Her words faltered. Tears spilled, but anger stiffened her spine. "If you fight this, you'll regret it. You'll end up alone." "I am already alone," I said quietly. "But I would rather be alone with dignity than surrounded by family who sell me like furniture." The silence that followed was heavy, electric. She turned abruptly, slamming the door so hard the window panes rattled. I sank into the chair, trembling, but unbroken. Later, Mrs. Patel came to check on me. I told her what happened. She placed both hands on mine and said, "Let her rage. Truth is stronger than anger. Tomorrow your lawyer will file the papers. The fight has begun." That night, I sat with my journal again. They call me too old, but I have never felt younger than I do now, standing in battle. Tomorrow I reclaim my name. I placed the journal beside the deed and slept with the strange, steady calm of a soldier who knows the war is finally hers to fight. The next morning, the house felt different, alert, as if listening. The sun stretched pale fingers across the floorboards, illuminating the folder on the mantel where I had left it beneath my husband's photo. I touched the wood of the mantel the way one touches a shoulder for strength. Today, Mr. Reed would file the motion. Today, my voice would leave these walls and enter official records where even my daughter could not silence it. I dressed in my simple gray dress, pinned my hair carefully, and brewed coffee. The smell filled the kitchen, grounding me. I poured a cup and sat at the table, staring at the chipped blue bowl. Its crack caught the light like a scar, a reminder that even broken things can endure. I whispered, "We fight together, don't we?" At mid-morning, the phone rang. It was Mr. Reed's office. The receptionist's tone was brisk but reassuring. "Mrs. Whitaker, the injunction has been filed. This freezes any transfer of your property until a full hearing." Relief surged through me like sunlight after storm clouds. For the first time in weeks, I felt a thread of safety. But safety is fragile. At noon, footsteps thundered in the hallway. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent. I peered through the peephole. Lena stood there, flanked by two men in suits. Not police, private. Their folders and stern faces betrayed their purpose. My stomach tightened. I opened the door only as far as the chain allowed. "Yes?" I asked. "Mrs. Whitaker," one of the men said, voice practiced, smooth. "We're here on behalf of Maple Grove and your daughter. We have documents requiring your signature." I let out a bitter laugh. "If you want my signature, gentlemen, you'll need to find a way to steal my hand as well." Lena stepped forward, her voice trembling with urgency. "Mom, please, don't do this. You're making it worse. If you just sign, everything will be easier." "Easier for whom?" I demanded. "For you? For your bills? For the man with the gleaming shoes who told you this was practical?" "It is not easier for me, Lena. It is exile." Her eyes glistened, but she pressed on. "You don't understand how hard things are. You raised me, yes, but now it's my turn to make choices. This is the only way we survive. Survive? My voice grew louder, steadier. Survival is not selling your mother's home behind her back. Survival is not silencing the woman who gave you life. You call this survival? I call it betrayal. The men exchanged uneasy glances. One cleared his throat. Mrs. Whitaker, if you refuse, this will escalate legally. Your daughter has authority. No, I interrupted, fire in my chest. She does not. That so-called authority is forged. My lawyer has filed against it. You will leave now, or I will call the police. For a moment, silence hung like a held breath. Then Lena whispered, You'll lose me, Mom. You'll lose Michael. I steadied myself against the door frame. Better to lose you honestly than keep you dishonestly. Love that steals is not love. It is hunger. Her face crumpled, but pride kept her from breaking. She turned sharply, motioning the men away. They left, their shoes echoing down the hall. The door clicked behind them, and I leaned against it, my heart pounding, but my spirit fierce. That evening, Mrs. Patel came with bread still warm from her oven. I told her everything. She listened, her eyes flashing with indignation. They came like wolves, she said, but wolves fear fire, and you, my friend, are fire. We ate together at the kitchen table, the bread tearing soft in our hands, the tea steaming. The house felt alive, as though it too had stood against them. Later, I opened my journal again. They brought men in suits. They brought threats, but I brought truth, and truth will outlast them all. As I closed the book, the phone rang again. This time it was Michael. His voice was hesitant, softer than I'd heard in years. Grandma, is it true? Did they really try to take the house without your permission? I swallowed hard. Yes, Michael, they did. There was silence, then a sigh. I didn't know. Mom said you agreed. She said you were tired of managing everything. Tired? My laugh was bitter. I am many things, Michael, but tired of my own life is not one of them. Another pause. I don't know what to believe anymore, he admitted. Believe the woman who raised you, I said gently. Believe the one who never lied to you, who never signed your name without asking. His voice wavered. I'll come see you tomorrow. Then the line went dead. I set the phone down, my heart a storm of hope and sorrow. Perhaps the fight was not only for the house, but for his faith as well. That night, as I lay in bed, the house creaked and groaned like an old friend settling in for sleep. I whispered into the dark, I am still here. I am not gone yet. And the silence, deep and steady, seemed to whisper back, we know. The following morning, I rose with a stiffness that came not only from age, but from the heaviness of the day before. My body felt like a map of old battles, aching joints, trembling hands, but inside me, something sharper glowed. The folder with the documents still sat on the mantel, untouched through the night, as if it too was keeping watch. Michael had promised he would come. I clung to that promise the way a sailor clings to the flicker of a lighthouse. He had sounded uncertain, but there had been a crack in his voice, a doubt that perhaps his mother's version of the story was not the only truth. I spent the morning preparing the house, not because I expected guests in the old way, with cake and coffee, but because I wanted him to see the life still humming here. I set fresh flowers in the chipped vase, laid the old family albums on the table, opened the curtains wide so the sun painted every corner. By late morning, the doorbell rang. My heart jolted. I hurried to the door, half afraid it would be Lena again, with her men in suits. But when I peered through the peephole, I saw only Michael, alone, shoulders hunched, hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. I opened the door, unchained but cautious. "Come in, Michael." He stepped inside, eyes darting around the familiar hallway as if it had turned into a museum since his last visit. He looked taller, older, but in his hesitation I glimpsed the boy who once raced toy cars along these floorboards. "Grandma," he said quietly, I needed to see for myself." I guided him into the kitchen. The blue bowl sat on the table with apples and oranges piled high, a silent witness. I poured tea, though my hands trembled so badly I nearly spilled. He noticed and reached out, steadying the cup for me. That small gesture almost broke me. "Michael," I began, "your mother told you I agreed to Maple Grove, that I wanted to leave this house." He nodded, looking ashamed. "She said you were too tired to manage anymore, that you signed over the rights yourself." I opened the folder, slid the forged authorization toward him. "Do you see this signature? Does it look like mine?" He studied it, frowning. "No, it's too neat. Yours always loops here," he said, pointing to the tail of the W in Whitaker. "This isn't you." I felt my chest swell with both pride and sorrow. He remembered. "Your mother wanted to believe she was helping me," I said softly. "But help without asking is not help. It's theft. She sold what wasn't hers. She tried to move me like a box. Is that love?" Michael's shoulders sagged. "I don't know. I just know she's desperate. She's drowning in bills, and she thinks this is the only way." I reached across the table, took his hand. "I know life is hard for her. I know. But hardship does not excuse betrayal. I gave her my youth, my hands, my sleepless nights. I gave her this home, and now she takes it back, as if I were too old to notice." His eyes filled, but he blinked the tears away. "I'm sorry, Grandma. I didn't want to believe you. I thought maybe you were confused, but now I see." He squeezed my hand. "What can I do?" My throat tightened. "Stand with me. Tell the truth when they try to say I imagined it. Show them I am still here, still thinking clearly, that I am not just old, I am alive." He nodded fiercely, and for the first time in years, I saw the boy who once promised to protect me from monsters under the bed. Our moment was broken by the sharp rap of knuckles on the door. I stiffened. Michael rose, went to the hallway. Through the peephole, he saw her. "It's Mom," he whispered. My pulse quickened. "Let her in," I said. Lena entered, her face pale, eyes swollen from sleeplessness. She looked between us, suspicion sparking. "What are you doing here, Michael?" He straightened. I wanted to hear Grandma's side. Her lips tightened. "Her side? Michael, she's confused. She doesn't understand what's best." "I'm not confused," I said sharply. "I understand perfectly. You betrayed me." Lena's gaze swung back to her son, pleading. "Michael, you know how hard it's been. You know the debt, the bills. But forging signatures, selling the house without telling her?" His voice cracked, young but fierce. "That's not right, Mom." Tears welled in her eyes. "I was trying to save us." "By destroying her?" he shouted. "By taking away the only place that's ours?" The room vibrated with silence. Lena turned to me, her face breaking. "I didn't want it this way. I didn't see another option." "Then you should have looked harder," I said, my voice low but unyielding. "Because there is always another way that does not involve betrayal." Michael moved to my side, placed his hand on my shoulder. The gesture said everything. He had chosen. Lena's tears spilled then, heavy, hot. "So it's both of you against me," she whispered. "No," I said. "It's truth against lies, love against hunger. That is all." She turned abruptly, grabbing her coat, and fled the house. The door slammed, echoing through the rooms. I sank into my chair, exhausted but unbroken. Michael stayed beside me, his hand still firm on my shoulder. "Grandma," he said softly, "I'll stand with you. Whatever comes next, I'll be here." I closed my eyes, letting the words settle in my heart. For the first time in this long fight, I was not alone. That night, I wrote in my journal, "Today, my grandson saw the truth. Today, he stood beside me. Perhaps blood can betray, but blood can also return. The battle is not won yet, but my voice is no longer just my own. We are two now, and together we are stronger than their lies." I slipped the journal back under my pillow, the house warm around me, and slept with a strange, steady peace. The fight was not over, but now I had an ally. That final morning arrived with a weight I could feel in my bones. The hearing at the courthouse was set for noon, and my lawyer, Mr. Reed, had told me everything rested on this day. Either my daughter's forged authority would stand, or the truth of my voice would be enough to tear it down. I dressed carefully, as if preparing for a battlefield. My gray dress, my husband's brooch, polished shoes, not vanity, armor. Michael arrived early, his face pale but determined. "I'll sit beside you, Grandma," he promised. Those words alone gave me strength. We rode together in a taxi, Mrs. Patel in the front seat clutching her umbrella like a staff. When we reached the courthouse, I felt the air shift, cold stone walls, polished floors, the hum of people with business that did not know my name. Inside the courtroom, Lena sat with her lawyer and the man with the gleaming shoes. She avoided my eyes, her hands twisting in her lap. My heart broke at the sight of her. The little girl I once braided hair for, now a woman ready to testify against her own mother. But pain sharpened into steel. I was not here to crumble. The judge, gray-haired but alert, asked us to begin. Mr. Reed presented my folder, every letter, every false signature, the glossy Maple Grove brochure that had assumed my consent. His voice was steady, his words clipped and clear. Then he turned to me. "Mrs. Whitaker, would you like to speak?" I rose slowly, gripping the edge of the table for balance. My knees trembled, but my voice did not. "Your Honor, I never signed away my home. I never agreed to Maple Grove. My daughter acted without my consent, believing age makes silence. But I'm not silent. This house was built by my husband's hands. It carries my life in its walls. They told me I was too old to decide, too old to matter. But I stand here, and I tell you, I know what I want, and it is mine." The courtroom was hushed. Even Lena's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. Then Lena was asked to speak. She stood, her voice shaking. "I only wanted what was best. My mother has fallen before. She forgets things. I couldn't manage it all. I thought Maple Grove was safer." The judge asked, "And did your mother consent?" Her silence was the loudest sound in the room. Finally she whispered, "No, she didn't." It was enough. The judge's ruling came clear and firm. The power of attorney invalid, the transfer frozen, the house restored fully to my name. The words landed like bells ringing across years of silence. Relief flooded me. Michael gripped my hand so tightly I thought our bones would fuse. Mrs. Patel smiled through tears, whispering, "Fire always wins against wolves." Lena sat pale, broken, unable to meet my eyes. For a moment, pity pierced me, but then I remembered the letters, the men in suits, the betrayal. Love does not excuse cruelty. Still, I prayed silently that one day she would find her way back, not as my betrayer, but as my daughter again. We left the courthouse into sharp winter sunlight. The cold bit my cheeks, but I lifted my chin high. People bustled around us, unaware that an old woman had just fought to keep her voice. But I knew, and my husband would have known. That evening, back at home, I sat at the kitchen table with Michael and Mrs. Patel. We ate simple food, bread, soup, fruit from the blue bowl. The house felt warm, alive, still mine. My grandson laughed softly at one of Mrs. Patel's jokes, and for the first time in months, joy cracked open inside me. Later, when they left, I wrote in my journal one last time. They said I was too old, but today I proved that age is not silence. Age is record. Age is strength carried through storms. I have kept my home. I have kept my name. And though I lost my daughter to betrayal, I found my grandson's loyalty. Perhaps that is how life repays us, by closing one door and opening another. I set the pen down, closed the journal, and looked around the kitchen. The chipped bowl, the worn table, the mantel with my husband's photo, they were still mine. The house hummed with quiet triumph. I lifted my gaze to the camera of memory, to the unseen listener of my story, and spoke aloud. Did you like my story? From which city are you watching? Then I smiled, weary but unbroken, because though they had tried to erase me, I had written myself back, louder than their signatures, stronger than their lies.